Hello and welcome to the Calmcast, a time to feel calm and think clearly. I'm Claire Downham, the Queen of Calm, a transformational life coach. I was a burnt out head teacher who finally made the journey to calm after years of trying, and I want to prevent you from having to do the same. The Calmcast is a series of short explorations, gently guiding you back to your natural state, which is calm and clarity. Just listen like you would listen to music, with an open mind and curiosity. There's nothing else to do. Now let's relax into today's episode. So today I'm talking about putting yourself first. And I'm not talking about that in a selfish way. I'm not talking about being horrible to other people or pushing other people out of the way or just being, selfish at all, really. But I think that I know myself that when I say putting yourself first, I don't really mean this. I mean looking after your physical body. Because as you know, I believe that our mental health is innate, that's always there. Now, sometimes we do get disconnected from it. And some of the thinking that causes us not to put ourselves first is some of that thinking that takes us away from connecting to our innate intelligence and our innate well-being. And I think where it's really clear that is that, well, it cannot be coming from innate intelligence for you to not take care of this physical body that you have, because it's the only one you have. You're not going to get another one. Well, you may well, if you believe that you will appear in another form at some point, but this particular form and this particular life, you only have one body and one chance to look after it. And all of the thinking that takes you away from that, including the thinking that stops you putting yourself first. I mean, maybe the title of this should be putting your body first. Because that's the only thing that's actually real. Your physical form, your physical body. And even your state of mind is represented, isn't it? Like when we say that we're mentally ill, that's because we're feeling something in our physical bodies, isn't it? That comes from our thinking. And the consequences of not putting ourselves first and not looking after ourselves is the things that I experienced, which, is burnout, utter exhaustion, utter inability by the end for my body to keep going, crashing out, as you might say, of the physical life that I had, not working for a year, having to give up my career that I'd committed far too much to, probably, for the previous 20 years. That was huge. Now I am actually grateful that happened now, because I've learnt so much since. But it was a huge change in my life. So what is it that stops us putting ourselves first, looking after ourselves? What is it that has us put everything else above us in the list? Well, as I've been talking to people about this, people that I work with, my clients and people who I just talk to generally, it seems that it's a voice in your head. And maybe you're familiar with the voice, or maybe it's become so entrenched and so habitual that you don't even notice it anymore, pointing you away from looking after yourself. So it's the voice that says, doesn't really say you don't matter, but it kind of says other things matter more. So it might be, oh, there's a piece of work I need to finish, or it looks like I have to have this done by a certain time, and so I'm working all hours to get something finished. And sometimes we do that, don't we? We have to do that for short periods, but not when that's becoming habitual. It's something that you're doing day in, day out. There's that piece of thinking about not being able to say no. Because good girls don't say no, do they? They don't say no to things that they're supposed to do, in inverted commas. There's that thinking that says, well, if I just get ahead a little bit, then I'll be able to kind of get into some kind of routine and then it'll be okay. But of course, that day never comes, does it? We keep going and we keep going and we keep going. I remember feeling that way. Keep on going, and eventually you'll get to the point where you can back off a little bit because you'll be ahead of the game in some way, shape or form, or even actually in line with the game. Because being ahead of it's a fantasy, isn't it? Completely. So there's that little voice as well. There's the voice that says good girls don't do that, that kind of thing, which I've already mentioned and I've mentioned again. So it must be really important if I've mentioned it twice. We've all got voices in our heads that look like they are the truth. But here's the thing about those voices that it's worth considering and important to consider, I think, is that they're not the truth. Those voices in your head that say you need to do this and you need to do that and you mustn't say no and you must get caught up and you must get this piece of work finished, or etc., etc. Those voices are not the truth. Here's what those voices are. Those voices are things that you learned many, many years ago, or the seeds of them were planted many, many years ago when you were a little girl, and it looked like the people around you were telling the truth because you were a little child and you didn't really know any better, did you? So I don't really like to go too much into the nitty-gritty and detail of where you learnt these things, but they are learnt. So the thing to know about that is that they are not true and they are not who you really are, and that voice in your head isn't the truth and is not the voice of God. It is not an instruction from on high. It's not your higher self. It's none of that. It's just some old habitual thinking. And there's something always for me around quality control here. Like if you, let's say you learnt that you weren't particularly worthy, and that will come in if you're not looking after yourself, from some adult, parent, teacher, whoever, who made you feel small in some situation, told you were a bit rubbish, told you were stupid or whatever, and it causes you to do some kind of avoiding experiencing the same kind of strategy, because that thinking, of course, is always trying to keep you safe, but it's trying to keep you safe from an imagined danger that isn't there anymore, or not good enough or whatever. Then that stuck. It became our thinking. And there are thousands of little nuggets of that floating around inside your head, preventing you from being in the present moment and being connected to what is good for you right now. That's the key. What is good for you right now will not be the story in your head. What is good for you right now, health-wise, like going to bed when you're tired rather than sitting at your computer till all hours keeping going, is not, that's not the voice of truth. The truth is, if your body is saying you're tired and your eyes are shutting and you're struggling to keep them open, then you should be in bed. I don't use the word should very often, but your body is saying go to bed. Why do we ignore that and listen to the silly voice in our heads? And it is a silly voice. So how we start to change this, it is not by doing anything deliberate. This is not right. I'm going to make myself go to bed at such and such a time every night, although that may be a consideration. It's more to do with presence. In this present moment, does it make sense to stay up when my entire body is saying go to bed? That's the key, isn't it? That's what, to just listen and just be present. And that's what we're not always doing, really. We're not always doing that because we take that voice in our heads far, far too seriously. But as we start to change the relationship with it, we can just let those thoughts pass. I notice thoughts now that say to do something rather than something that might be better for me. One example that came up yesterday was that we went to the Eden Project, and they have a lovely shop with loads of lovely organic food, and they have some gorgeous looking chocolate and vegan too, so non-dairy. I don't have dairy. And for the moment when we were stood at the chocolate stall and I picked up a bar and read the ingredients, it looked like it was okay for us to eat and blah, blah, blah. For that moment, I was kind of, oh yeah, chocolate. And then I just thought, do you know what? As soon as I walk away from here, the chocolate thought will be gone. I'm not going to pine for chocolate for the rest of the day. And so I put it down and we carried on. Because I haven't eaten chocolate because the chocolate thought disappeared and stopped turning up. And so the chocolate thought comes back when I'm around chocolate, but it disappears again just as quickly when I'm not around chocolate because I'm not thinking about it and desiring it. And that's just a little example about some thinking that's just disappeared, that was habitual. I saw chocolate as a thing that I needed to feel okay for a long time. But it turns out it doesn't really work that way. So yeah, just be aware, and this is pointing to just start to notice those thoughts that are pointing you away from looking after yourself, and see what happens when you don't do what they're telling you to do. I think you'll find it'll be okay. Imagine that. Imagine if when you're tired you go to bed and don't listen to the thought that says stay up and finish this. Maybe just try that and see what happens. This is all about getting curious and seeing what you see when you give it a try. Take care. Lots of love.
Thank you so much for listening. There's nothing to do now but bring some awareness to how this is working out in your life. Listen regularly to experience longer and longer periods of calm. This has been the Calmcast with Claire Downham, Queen of Calm. Take care and keep listening.